This is Laree Williamson, CEO of Agriculture for Life. In this edition of Nourishing Minds, we're visiting with Katy Franklin, Operations Director of ReFED. ReFED is a national not-for-profit dedicated to ending food loss and waste across the U.S. food system by advancing data-driven solutions. Well, thank you, Katy, for joining us today. Well, you're down in the U.S., and so we're up here in Canada. We're home office in Calgary, and we can brag today because it's a beautiful day. We're through our cold snap. So we're pretty happy about that. Everybody's out playing around again as much as they can with COVID. So welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization? What is ReFED? It's kind of an interesting business.
Sure. So ReFED is a national nonprofit based in the United States, like you mentioned, and we work to end food loss and waste by advancing data-driven solutions. So we work in kind of three main areas. One is data and insights. So just a couple of weeks ago, we launched the Insights Engine, and that coupled with our new roadmap to 2030 and some other kind of content and resources that we put out, really positions us as kind of the go-to source for information on, what is this problem and how do we solve it? So we help others figure out, what their food waste situation is, and then what can they actually do about it. So it's, there's tons of information out there about, 1/3 of our food is wasted globally and the different numbers for Canada and the US. But I think what's special about what we do on that side of things is really get to the solutions and get really specific about, like, you're a retailer, great, here's what you can do. Oh, you're a manufacturer, you're a city government, et cetera. So we really help our stakeholders, and for us, that's everyone in the food system, really learn, how they can be part of the solution. So that's one really big piece of what we do. And then we also have a pretty special and unique expertise on the capital and innovation side. So if you look at, everything that it's going to take to, cut food waste in half by 2030, which is the US's national goal. We also have the global sustainable development goal that points us there. It's going to take a lot of money. It's going to cost some things, whether that's businesses investing internally or financing for new startup companies or philanthropic contributions and government programs. It's going to cost a fair amount of money to make that happen. So we play a pretty important piece of the puzzle there in bringing different types of capital providers to food waste and helping them figure out, why should I even care about this? Because they're, hardly anyone has, a whole fund dedicated to a food waste thesis. Maybe we'll get there. And then also, where do they put their money? So, there's the whole universe of what they could be funding or investing in. So how do they make those choices? And then we work similarly with solution providers, helping them learn how to, grow their impact, how to scale, how to find other partners to be collaborating with, getting connected with clients, things like that. And then our last body of work is really on the stakeholder engagement side. So we do a fair amount of kind of convening and connecting, bringing really diverse people together. Because we work with, everyone across the food system, I think we're really fortunate that we can bring folks together who just would never sit around the table together. Policy, academia, food businesses, competing food businesses. And a lot of times, it's those conversations that really unlock those big changes to get stuff done.
That's really interesting. So positioning as a hub, right? So if I'm interested, yeah. I know I can go to you guys as a source. And so do you work with Canadian organizations at this point?
There's definitely some crossover and some interaction. We don't have dedicated Canadian programming. And, if you go to the Insights Engine, all of that's US data, for instance. But, we've worked pretty closely with the Canadian Zero Waste Council when they put together their zero waste plan on food waste. We actually are part of a project called the Pacific Coast Collaborative, which my colleague Jackie might have mentioned to you guys before, but that's an initiative on the West Coast of North America, so California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, plus several of the states and counties within those regions. And that group is implementing a voluntary agreement with food businesses to work with them to commit, measure, and take action. And it's our representatives from British Columbia and City of Vancouver in particular, just super engaged. They've been so wonderful at thinking about, how can we do similar things in Canada with the lowest lift required? Because that's what we always want to do. We want to be inspiring others, but we don't want people to be redundant. If we can make someone else's work, 5 steps shorter, like that's a huge win for us. Yeah.
Well, for sure. And sorry, and I was thinking as you said that, to learn from what you guys, your expertise, and to be able to collaborate and bring this group together and then share, because you're right, there's not enough time or money in the world for everybody to replicate. So sharing and collaborating is very valuable. And so how long has the organizer or the not-for-profit been operating? When did you guys get started?
Yeah, so the idea of ReFED, it's kind of an interesting kind of growing up story. The idea of ReFED kind of came to be around 2015. And at that point, it really was just, a group of people led by some folks at Mission Point Partners, where we were kind of initially incubated, looking at, what is this problem? Like, what the heck is food waste? How do we solve this? Is this as big as it seems? And that team in 2016 published our first roadmap report, the roadmap to reduce US food waste by 20%. Mm-hmm. And at that point, again, we were just a report. There weren't staff, it was a report. And the purpose was get that information out there and let's see if something happens. And, voila, it did. It was just very clear that there is something special, even in the way that the group at that time had kind of designed the collaborative research and information gathering component of that report, that it engaged so many people from across the sector. And everyone was saying, we need an organization like ReFED that can be that hub, that can help, bring us all together, really lead on the data and information that's getting out there, and maybe do some other things that we wouldn't be able to do alone from all of our various organizations or companies. And so a little bit after the roadmap was launched, the team was really focused on that dissemination, the roadshow, getting it out. And then, we really started building a team in 2017. We had a couple of folks on board before then, but I'd say 2017 was when we, started really thinking through programs and building out our networks more intentionally and figuring out what does our org chart look like? What kind of staff do we need to do this? And it's been a very rapid learning experience for the organization since then. And we still have a lot of learning to do. We're still very young, but we've been fortunate enough to really kind of pretty rapidly test quite a few different, programmatic approaches to things. And, maybe it's this year, next year, a couple of years from now, but I think we have a sense of who we are. And, I imagine our programs are going to continue to evolve around kind of those core elements I mentioned in the beginning.
So give me an example. So the Insights Engine, that's a big program. So tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so the Insights Engine, it's a web-based tool, or it's actually a family of web tools, technically. And it's a website where you can go in and really interact with the data. So you've got a tool called the Food Waste Monitor, where you can explore all the different elements of food waste. You can look at it by cause, by food type, you can look at it by state even. So you can really get in there and understand, kind of the picture of food waste. And then you can really take this journey from understanding what the problem is, and then follow a thread through, then what are the solutions? So through this work, there's a ton of data gathering, analysis, and the actual kind of web development and software components. But in the analysis piece, our team analyzed about 75 solutions to look at, if we could really put those forward as viable solutions, and how much data could we capture and report on around them. We ultimately ended up with 40 solutions that we could fully model and have at least some confidence in the data we were putting out in terms of being able to say, where is this going to work? What's the policy environment? What's the financing, and so on. And then we also have a set of solutions that just are unmodeled at this point. Either data doesn't exist or we couldn't get it for whatever reason. And then we've also got a set of actions we're calling best practices that are things that are being implemented quite a bit so far, but just everyone should be doing them. And so you can really explore that solution piece and get a sense of, okay, what's the world of solutions we could be implementing? And through each of all of that, you can narrow in on, again, like I'm a retailer, or I'm a city government, or what have you. And you can look at it from the finance perspective of, maybe you're actually an investor and you want to get in on the food waste game. And then we also have a solution provider database where you can go farther and say, okay, I want to implement waste tracking and analytics, but where do I start? So then you can go into the solution provider database and actually see, and I don't know the exact number, but great, there's 10 providers. I can reach out to those people now, and I can start implementing that solution. So, and then the last tool on there is our impact calculator, where you can go in and input, tons, pounds, kilograms of food waste and look at, what are the environmental impacts. And you can also look at alternative scenarios. So you could say, here's what my company is doing today. What if we cut food waste in half? How's that going to contribute to our carbon reduction goals or our water saving goals? So it helps people kind of put that into the frames where they probably aren't looking at food waste in isolation. It probably is part of bigger sustainability goals. And then throughout the whole tool, we do look at things from the lenses of just pure diversion in terms of volume, water savings, greenhouse gas emissions, job creation, meal creation or meal equivalents, just recognizing some solutions won't actually bring meals to folks, and then financial benefit. So looking at what it's going to cost and what's the actual ROI going to be.
Wow. I can imagine that took a few days to build.
Just a little bit. No, the team's been working on it for about 18 months or so. And it was one of those things where a group of folks, some of us were sitting around a table, kind of, whiteboarding, figuring out what it could do. And there were several points in time when we were like, is this even going to be possible? Because getting data is so hard. And it's, we're super fortunate to have a wonderful partnership with Nielsen, who's contributed some data for us and some other data providers, and then just dozens and dozens of folks who participated in interviews, gave feedback. It is such a collaborative process, and good thing we did that, because it's one of those tools where if we had put it out without letting everyone kick the tires first, they'd be poking holes in it.
Exactly. But now it was like a lot of work and everybody got to be a part of it. So where would you find it? Is it on its own website? Is it its own URL or?
So if you just go to refed.com, up in the right-hand corner, there's a little button to get into it, or you can just go to insights.refed.com. So it is kind of technically its own little webland, but you can get to it from our website.
And is it a member subscription? So do I need to be a member to access the information, or can anybody use it?
Oh, that's a great question. It is completely free and accessible by all.
Wow.
So yeah, at least with what we're putting out today, we know this information is so critical to everyone. And we, part of our, our organization's vision is not just, making our food system more sustainable, but it is making it more inclusive as well. Mm-hmm. And so if, only the big guys can access that information, we're not fulfilling that mission of ours in that way.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned you're a charity or a not-for-profit. Mm-hmm. As a charity, I know that all of the good work is done through partnerships and collaborations. So where do you guys see your support? Is it from government? Is it a combination of government and business or private donors? Is it a combination of all the above?
Yeah, so our funding mostly comes from, foundations and corporations and some individuals. It's actually interesting. You mentioned government a few times. It's like one of the few areas we haven't gotten into, at least not yet. So it's a good mix of folks, and we have been, really fortunate to have some people supporting us even since that original roadmap came out. And they are some of our most enthusiastic partners. Like, we breathe and eat and sleep food waste because we're working in it. And these funders of ours, they have other jobs and lives to live, and they're just so excited. And they're some of my favorite people to work with.
Well, and you've done a lot. So, I would ask you what your success is, but I think the insights engine is probably one of them. Yeah.
That's our kind of crown jewel, definitely right now.
Yeah, for sure. So as operations director, as I get excited here, what's a day at work look like for you?
Yeah. So, it is just an office job in that sense. I'm not out, doing the fun stuff that I've done before in terms of like actually digging through trash cans. But it could be a mix of things really. And even, my day to day is probably like a little less, exciting in the traditional sense compared to like our program staff, but I might be, pulling together monthly financials, might be prepping for a board meeting, might be, speaking on a webinar or attending a partner webinar to learn what's going on. Could be even just earlier today working with the team on a hiring plan for a new team member we're going to be bringing on soon. So it really varies in all of that.
Yeah. Well, true operations director of a not-for-profit, many hats. Do what needs to be done. So, and how long have you been with the organization? Since the start?
I have been here almost 4 years. So I started in April of 2017.
Yeah, so you've seen a lot of growth. Have you seen from a public interest side more attention being paid and care to food waste?
I have actually. So I started working on food waste a couple years before I came to ReFED. So I've been in food waste for about 7 or 8 years now. Excuse me. And definitely from that point, there's been a lot more interest. There's been more major, like more popular news media. I'd say to some degree, we still have a bit of an echo chamber. We're talking to a lot of the same voices sometimes, but that's changing a bit. And while what happened in COVID is undeniably terrible, there's a little glimmer of light in the fact that it gave food waste the front page of a lot of major publications. And, again, the reasons we got there are bad, but, New York Times and, Dana Gunders, our executive director, was on Fox talking about it. Like, it really gave us just kind of a unique moment in time for us to shout about food waste, really quickly and loudly, because, then everyone was focused on the virus itself. It's definitely picked up. And even if I think about, maybe in 2014 or so, I was working at another organization building kind of a mapping locator tool to connect with organizations similar, but kind of ultimately different from our solution provider database. And I want to say, like, we were excited to, be getting close to 100 organizations listed there. And today, our solution provider database at ReFED, we have over 700 organizations.
Wow.
Now that isn't to say, like, I certainly could have missed some that first time around, but
probably not that. Yeah.
The growth in organizations working on this topic is really skyrocketed. So I think that's been amazing. And then even the number of, major businesses or big industry players that have made commitments, like, it just continues to go up. And, we're seeing increasingly folks, reporting on food waste in their CSR reports. And I think I want to say it was 2019 because last year feels like a blur, but Sodexo even tied some of their financing to food waste metrics. So there are all these really cool and interesting and I think powerful ways we've really seen it become more.
Well, and I think you're right, and I know from our experience, food waste is right in front of you. So a lot of families or schools or community groups, they can feel good about making solutions come to life, if you will, because they're in their own homes thinking about food waste when they're buying at the grocery store. Okay, maybe I don't need to buy so many oranges this week. I can cut that in half because I know I'm not gonna eat it, and I usually throw them out. Or so it's something that they can do. We can all do. And again, we talk. Well, what can one person do? Well, one person can do a lot, because when you start to look at what you actually waste just at the household level alone, it's pretty astonishing. So I think that's one sort of easy intersection for all of us as consumers in society to say, okay, yeah, I can do my part. And especially the financial benefit of it. I mean, we waste a lot of money on food that we throw in the garbage, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we look at that as well. So now, do you guys host an event? Do you host a conference? What's from an educational perspective, how do you get that message out?
Yeah. So I will say we probably look at it a little bit more from just like more of an engagement perspective than an education perspective, which is, a little nuanced there. But in normal times, we host an annual food waste summit. We actually used to call it the U.S. Food Waste Summit, and very intentionally dropped the U.S. part from it to make it more inclusive.
Well,
I want to say exactly. And that has, we actually started hosting that in collaboration with the Harvard Law School Food Law and Policy Clinic initially, and then eventually just kind of took it over ourselves. We still collaborate with them on a lot of things, and they're fantastic. But that is usually, it's about a 400-person conference, big event, with really a mix of programming, but ultimately with a goal of being as action-oriented as possible. Mm-hmm. And that might mean we're hosting working groups, or we're creating little collaborations that are going to have a life outside of the summit, with the intent of next year we're coming back together and we want to know what you made progress on, kind of thing. And of course, there's your normal plenaries and panels and whatnot. But that's our main event. And then from depending on where our other programs and projects are, we might be having more specific events for things like that. But then of course, the past 12 months have looked radically different in every way. So, yeah.
So are you looking at a virtual event this year, or just wait till you can gather in large groups again?
It's still TBD right now. Okay. We planned on hosting a summit last year, postponed it to this year, and right now we're still trying to get a feel for where things are at. In any case, we anticipate we'll host something. Mm-hmm. If we go virtual, that might not mean one big event. Could, again, we're going to look at it through that lens of how is this going to be the most effective and actionable. So whatever form that takes from a virtual perspective, or in person if that's possible. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, well, thank you so much for taking part of your day to share your story with us as we're digging deeper into agriculture and the food value chain and of course, food waste. It's been wonderful to connect and learn more about what you're doing. And I'm in awe at all of the work that went into building that web data tool. And so we'll certainly be encouraging people to go and utilize it as a tool and see if it helps spread the word on that one a little bit. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.